هاي يا جماعة ازيكم؟ النهاردة it's a discussion panel. أعرفكم بنفسي الأول وبعدين غالية تعرف نفسها ونحكي لكم the first part من ال discussion عبارة عن إيه and the second part ال results اللي احنا عليها الفترة اللي فاتت دي مع 5 photographers. أنا عبدالله صبري, artist and photographer. I started with doing portraits and then led to archaeology photography and then fashion photography. So yeah, it was all over the genres of photography. So that's how it, during like over a decade, that how it kind of built the comfort with the camera and the aesthetic that I wanted to reach and the results and the consistency of work, which is, I always say, photography is it's a practice. You have to keep practicing all the time, and you have to keep practicing different approaches and different methods of photography, and that's how it's constantly interesting. That's how we don't lose passion about it, because it's so easy to keep doing the same kind of photography. After a few years, you lose kind of the passion for it. That's pretty much a long journey of photography that I thought at some point it stopped, but it's apparently keep reviving itself. So let me introduce Ghalia.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. بالعربي صح؟
Mix والنبي عاش.
أنا اسمي غالية سراقبي. I'm a Syrian designer. مصممة جرافيكية وبدرس تصميم جرافيكي بالجامعة الأمريكية بالقاهرة. شغلي كتير متعدد، كمان بعتبر حالي فنانة. بشتغل مع فنانة من جنوب أفريقيا اسمها لورين ألكسندر، عنا كولكتيف اسمه فاوندلاند. كمان I do curation sometimes. Today we are going to يعني نقدم a collaboration بلشنا مع عبد الله from his point of view as a photographer وأنا my point of view as a designer, and what we think about image production in general in photography. حنبتدي بمجموعة أسئلة. هاي الأسئلة كانت starting point إحنا كيف فكرنا بهاي الوركشوب وليه عملنا هاي الكولابوريشن. وبعدين حننتقل للوركشوب والريزولتس تبع الوركشوبس.
Okay, we're gonna start with the hardest question and the most basic one. As a photographer, we tend to confuse في فروق كبيرة قوي أو في فرق لازم يبقى معروف ما بين the image and the photograph and the picture. الحاجات دي كلها وتند إن إحنا عامة في الزمن عامة اللي إحنا فيه والتصوير. واو. Gonna get used to it now. That a basic question like this عامة ما بقاش أي حد بيعرف يجاوب عليه فولي أو يقدر يلم الجوانب بتاعته كلها ويغطي السؤال دوت. yeah, starting عامة ده كان حاجة من الحاجات اللي احنا اتكلمنا فيها في الوركشوب. كانت series of أسئلة كتير وكانت discussions مفتوحة ما بيننا وما بين participant. Sometimes like it was so philosophical, sometimes it was but we never had like يعني حاجة زي what is a photograph. It's never you can find identification of photograph على Wikipedia, but it's still it means different من حد لحد, and the usage of it والميديم ازاي بيستخدم ان هو هل هو عشان يوصل معلومة, هل هو عشان تدوكيمنت, هل هو عشان تماركت الحاجة, هل what's the definition of photograph.
احنا كمان from a designer point of view we produce images, we also curate images. فمعنى الصورة كتير بيختلف, and I think photographs for me as a designer is هي الصورة اللي بيتم اختيارها بالآخر. يعني you make a lot of photographs Especially now with digital photography, we make hundreds of photographs in one click, but the photograph that you pick to be the one and you print it or you submit it to the client is the photograph, especially when you print it as a physical one. So this is for me the difference between an image and the photograph. Yani just to get it in. Yeah. And then we talked about the difference between screen photography and printed photography. So from a technical point of view as well.
يعني هو the whole actually panel النهارده discussion is all about it's يعني obvious من الاسم بتاع الtalk why we still need to print. البوينت دي برضو part of the definition اللي بيفرق a photograph from an image زي ما غالية قالت. As a photographer عامة for years شغلي كتير وصورت different genres زي ما كنت بقول لكم في الأول. There is something that للأسف عشان modern time اللي احنا فيه it's usually consumed by digital and visual and like screen presentation للصور بتاعتنا. It's so rare إن أنت تلاقي حد that it's keen إن هو يطبع الشغل بتاعه. And as a photographer, there is a huge difference لما بوري نفس الصورة على iPad من إن أنا أوريها مطبوعة على ورقة فوتوغرافيا. No matter the printing method إيه، حتى لو dark room print، لو inkjet، لو laser، لو ريزو، لو whatever أي نوع print، كل مرة الصورة فيها بتطبع السايز بتاع الصورة والورقة والإنك والحاجات ده بيفرق كتير قوي. it has like a very strong impact على الصورة، غير الإمباكت مختلف وبعيد جدا عن الإمباكت بتاع السكرين. The one technical thing that I noticed and it's very important, الصورة على screen it's a backlit light. It's the light is coming through the pixels and that's how you see the image. الصورة المطبوعة it's a picture in whatever، لو أنا حاططها في gallery in certain light scenario أو حاططها في ambient light زي دوت، الهايلايتس والشادوز بتاعت الصورة as a photographers you will notice it's a huge difference. إن أنا أخلي الصورة backlit أو زي البانلز مثلا اللي وراكم، الإفكت بتاع الصورة البانل النور جاي من ورا الصورة it's a different impact than الصور اللي قدامها المطبوعة اللي أنت شايفها في اللايتنج اللي في المكان. This is a it's very simple point but it makes a huge difference على الطابع بتاع الصورة على الشخص اللي بيتفرج. إن أنا بشوف النور جاي من ورا غير لما بقى شايف النور بينعكس على المسطح بتاع الصورة. this is a little bit technical شوية as a يعني impact. can also
Totally agree. We can move to the next one.
Yeah,
Okay. We also discussed the modern world in relation with photos in general, experience, value, and purposes. We do experience hundreds and thousands of photos every day, but of course we see them in our surroundings, in the streets, in our homes. But mainly today, unfortunately, we only see them on social media. We scroll through them, and of course those social platforms or like digital platforms, they kind of democratized photography in a way, make it accessible. So the distribution is amazing, the exposure is amazing, but we never realize how this affected how we experience photographs. First of all, we always, if we all use Instagram, وأكيد we see all the photos always in the same size. Like it's really determined on your iPad or iPhone or even screen. So we always see all the photographs in one format. And this is, in me as a designer who works in publishing and publish books, it's a kind of a crucial difference. Secondly, the context. Like we always see it in the context that it's determined by the algorithm that those the platform that we use. So whenever I see a picture, Abdallah could see it as well, but his algorithm, his network, define the context that this picture is appearing. فهو بيشوفها مثلا مع رفقاته صور that his friends and his network posting. I see it with another in another context, so we never experience those pictures in the same way لأن الكونتكست مختلف and the context is always changing. يعني أنا ممكن أشوف الصورة on a story or on a feedback once بعد 5 دقايق أشوفها in another context because it's changing all the time. فهيدا بيأثر على how we perceive those photos or what we think about them لأنه we always tend to try to find meanings in the relation between the single picture and its surrounding.
Yeah, I always find this برضه with social media and Instagram. It depends what picture you saw before you scroll and what picture you see after. That does affect your impression على الصورة اللي انت شفتها في النص. It's the thread of watching images بيأثر كتير على الصورة, which is نقطة يعني بالنسبة لي it's very critical that how does this affect the value بتاع الصورة نفسها. Because we have already access to a lot of images. There's thousands of images, millions of images getting produced كل يوم على whether على تليفون, whether professional camera, whether مش بس كانوا social media, على التلفزيون, على magazines, في الشارع, في البيلبوردز, everything around us بقى saturated جدا بفيجوالز وصور كتير موجودة حوالينا, and that's definitely will affect the value of a photograph. Unless أنا بالنسبة لي personally, unless this photograph has something unique, أنا مش بتكلم technically جوه السبجكت بتاع الصورة, because it's very interesting subject طول الوقت. بالعكس ما هي دي المشكلة إن هي it's a very interesting subject stimulating جدا, ففي خلاط شغال في عينك ومخك وإدراكك. بس the thing is the right question always وبالنسبة لي السؤال مهم جدا, ايه الفاليو بتاع الصورة عامة, ايه اللي بيخلي الصورة ليها value. So it's easier for me to notice a value لما بمسك صورة في ايديا just because مش بس ان انا شايفها, I'm touching it, يعني لو لسه طالعة من البرينتر I can smell it. لو عاملها في الدارك روم I can يعني it's not just one sensory that it's working. It's multiple sensories that it's working. You have the effect of the surrounding, you have the لو في مزيكا, لو في silence. So I think the value of a photograph, it does come not just because the subject الصورة موجود جوه الصورة, it's somehow also your interaction مع الصورة دي.
Yeah, it's become day by day very difficult to create an intimate relation with photographs. Personal intimate. So if you look at the pictures hanged in your house, you see them in different, like through time, and you see them with you changing as a person, and they become a memory, and they become part of your life somehow. So even this like faded picture on your fridge has an emotional value. More than a picture on your Instagram page or profile. So I think this also, like, for us is very important why we still need to print them as objects.
Yeah, I always think about like the family album and how like it's very few images in there that it's فعلا documenting how actually ولو بصيت يعني if we recall our memories and go back in our memories, it can usually لو في عيد ميلاد بيحصل ففي حد في العيلة على طول هو ده اللي بيصور, and he's taking the responsibility of documenting. Just one camera and just one perspective that it's documenting دوت, and somehow because it's an analog or traditional method فكان preserved as a print. But now we look at what's happening, everybody's taking a lot of pictures, like thousands of pictures hundreds of pictures in one event in the same birthday now. But the sad thing that I noticed that people most of the time, they don't rewatch these pictures. They just take pictures and they don't go back look at these pictures. Unless you talk with them about certain thing and then you go, and when you go back to this, scrolling back in your gallery so fast to 2005, you're gonna have like 50 shots from the same angle, same thing. And it just somehow, the memory got diluted in so many images. It got fractured in a bit. long in this.
Yeah, it's very important one. I think the next one will be about physicality of the photographs, and we talked about it a little bit. And I think it has to do with the material of the photograph itself as an object. When you print a photograph, so you print it on paper or whatever material, even in textile, and the effect of this material, the actually is gonna the choices and the decision you make to be for it to become an object, they determine also like how we perceive them in terms of material, size, texture, tones, all of these. All of these kind of things, and also about the uniqueness of this object. So even if we print a digital photograph on a paper, it's never going to be identical. Also in its journey later, like how we frame it, the way how it's the way how the surrounding actually affect the photo. So by light, dust, temperature, everything will make this object with time become a unique object. And I think this is very important about the photograph in general, and we should keep it.
Yeah, there's something like the past like year and a half or two, I just went back to like the traditional classical darkroom methods of printing. there is something that يعني لو في photographers كتير، بس لو في حد دخل دارك روم وحط الصورة قبل كده and the developer and see the pictures actually appear on the paper, there is something about this moment that as a photographer you know that you want to keep doing this for the rest of your life. You know, there is something that it clicks with every photographer, that is like the magic moment of whole photography actually industry and method and process and everything, and this moment is priceless. It just because and symbolically and and literally the picture does manifest right in front of your eyes. It's in every way the picture just manifests in your eyes, and that's something that the time you spend to produce such a picture in a dark room or even developing and processing curriculum, it's so long that you somehow you create certain connection للصورة. مش مجرد another 5 images. That there's enough time and enough actually care to it. Did I go back?
No, this one is good. Photographs take a long
Share.
I think we kind of talked about this point. Is also like when we turn the photographs into a physical object, it's very important also to see how this photograph will be presented. Is it as a alone stand photograph or in a collection with other photographs? And this was something very important in the workshop that we presented. When you are in the process of making a zine or a book or whatever, like story from a collection of photographs, the whole selection process will change. Some photographs, they stand alone amazingly. They say a lot, but when you put them next to another picture, then you see that maybe those two pictures start to compete with each other, or they're telling completely something different. So even the process of what, and I think we went through this while the workshop, that the final selection that made it for the book maybe was not the most amazing photographs, but together the collection actually said a lot and represented the collective impression of the whole experience.
Yeah, especially when you put pictures together. I think like you don't focus much about like how strong the picture is. I think the whole focus should be about like creating the harmony, because at the end of the day it's a storytelling. I cannot be just speaking now and then suddenly shout in your face and go back to speaking normal and there's nothing happen. Like it's gonna be weird. So there's something, unless you want to create certain kind of shock or tension. Yeah, but if you just put the best shots, sometimes they exhaust each other and exhaust you as a viewer. The thing about like actually standing alone and putting picture in context. The human mind is always working about like trying to make sense of whatever happened. If something really unusual happened, I will not get uncomfortable unless I figure out a way So putting a picture standalone, if you just look at the picture alone, لو ما فيش أي text موجود قدامها and just a picture in front of you, the funny part about the human mind that is trying so hard to make sense of this picture, trying to relate it to itself so it doesn't feel like something that it's, and sometimes people like their work is too abstract or too that people don't like whatever they do. And the same thing when you put like three pictures next to each other, حتى لو متصورين في أماكن مختلفة في أزمان مختلفة، غصب عنك لو وريتك ثلاث صور جنب بعض هتحاول to make sense إن الثلاثة دول مربوطين ببعض. There is something about the human brain that loves to connect things to each other to make sense. Usually it's coming back to where you are coming from, the way you perceive the world. So for me, that's when the photography, like the power of the photography, relies because it's a stillness. It's a very silent medium. Doesn't have any information except what you're seeing with your eyes, and it's up for you to interpret it the way you want to interpret it. So there's I don't remember who said this, but a quote of like photographer that's saying. Yeah, exactly. That's my point. We all try to make sense of what is this. No, it's weird. Okay. So, yeah. Should we start running out? I'm pulling one. Okay. So yeah, the point is like there's I don't remember the name, but it's saying like the photographer's job and the moment he takes the photograph, because it's not up to the photographer anymore. Once you take the photograph, it's not yours. It's not up to you. It's up to whatever who's gonna look at it, gonna interpret it without like if you don't put any explanation, it's up for the viewers. Your job is done the moment you take a photograph. Right. And let's go.
Now the fun part starts.
Yeah, the fun part stuff.
So,
Yeah,
shall I introduce
introduction
it?
about the.
Yeah, so From Negative to Zine is a workshop was intended to be for 4 days and ended up to be 5 days.
From
It's
10 to 3 and wound up from 10 to 12.
yes, it's very intense. So, as the title says, it's a full experience, and actually, it's kind of simulating our collaboration that was going on for a year now. So, starting with shooting analog film, developing, and taking the results, make a design of a photo zine, and then produce it in 4 days, which is a very ambitious plan, but we made it. Today we are going to also share the results and what happens. So the purpose of the workshop, can you click? So we're going to talk about the purpose, the challenges, and the success, and also the results. So as I said, it's to create a full experience where a group of people collaborate on producing one collective photozine, to go through the whole process from A to Z, discussing ideas, make decisions together, and finally produce one final results.
Okay. يعني photozine.
Yes.
That's okay. The zine is the short for a magazine, so it's a publication. So you can actually, it's a medium that you can do it yourself. You can self-publish. You don't have to have a publisher house to go, and it's always like it's also not, it's not necessarily has to stick to the rules of a photo book, because photo book it's much more bigger. It has certain standards to start with, from the material to the print to the size of it, all of this to the quality of the print. So a zine is something that you can actually go to Xerox and create your own zine if you have the idea and the story and the narrative together. And you can print as many copies as you want, as much as you can afford, and you can start actually selling it, publishing it, or showing it to the people. The whole idea of a zine is just it's like you're going to the gym. It's pretty much you putting your ideas together in one solid interesting way of presenting it. That's me as a photographer. That's what I'm interested in, and that's how I will tell the story. It doesn't have to be like a long photo essay. It doesn't have to be. It can be something that interests you. It's very flexible, self-publication. So it's what for me. It's the like for any photographer is the best practice you can do.
It's also like more technical about zine. It's usually limited editions because printing in general is very costly, and the process of printing is long as well. So the idea, creatives like not only photographers, designers, even writers, poets, they use this format of a zine to publish themselves and to share their ideas with people. So it is also kind of keeping publishing alive, and also to have the right to publish as well. So it's not always going through the official channels. It's also like, yeah, as Abdullah said, it's a very good exercise to, and also very good a format to work together with other people and to show your work. Of course, in Europe and the States, the zine culture is really big. And we have special websites, galleries, communities who actually only publish zines. So it's kind of like a parallel, how to say, universe to the publishing, the formal publishing industry. Yes, it is kind of underground. Sometimes it has some anarchy in it because it's against the official rules, but also is as a way to stay in production. It's very hard for creative people nowadays to find it, like to achieve to print like a very beautiful photo book. It's a process, so it's a way to keep producing and making, and to also publish your work and share it with other people. Yes,
Yeah.
we do.
So yeah, this is good. This is like the process of actually how the workshop went. So the workshops, it was 5 participants, as we said, 5 photographers, and the whole structure started like, okay, are we gonna do it in analog? So we created a theme and we created a medians that we're gonna work with along the way. So it's kind of like to put the whole thing, because if you let it open, it's so hard to actually finalize and complete a project without having a guideline. And this was the part that we actually prepared. What is our medium? What we're gonna do, and how we're gonna start and how we're gonna end and how we're gonna produce. So the first day was a photo walk. It's analog. Each photographer had two black and white rolls, negative rolls. One is ISO 100 and one is 400, so different kind of sensitivity. And we decided the theme is gonna be passages of downtown, because as a concept, as a philosophy, it has a lot. It's open, yet it's a very narrow space. But it's open as a concept to actually to interpret it, to see it, because passages is shortcuts. It's between the streets, but you cannot not notice that it's very busy. Actually, places it's occupied with things, with activities. So for 5 photographers and us, it's a nice also exercise to actually go and like practice your photographer eye, and what is going to be this passages represent, coming along with also a text.
Yeah, so the first day started with a photo walk for 3 hours. As Abdullah said, each participant shot 2 films. And we also asked the participant to write a short paragraph about their experience, what actually the theme as passage mean to them. And we also developed those.
That was a stretch. So yeah, we thought like we will develop maybe a 1 roll or 2 rolls, just to introduce the participant to the idea of developing your own negative, which is it's something that was one of the ideas and the goals of the workshop. the idea of developing negative is always, and analog photography in general, it's always intimidating for photographers. بيحسوا إنه إيه it's a lot of you know لو حصل حاجة للفيلم خلاص الصورة هتروح. No, you cannot, like everybody's like really scared of actually shooting film and developing and going through the process. So one of the main objectives of the workshop is to break this feeling. So we were deciding to do like 1 or 2 negatives to develop, and then the participants they were really excited to develop the rest. So we wound up developing 14 film in one session.
It's a lot of time. So I think in this workshop we made the decision that everything that is challenging with risks that can fail, we go for it. So it was like kind of a challenge. So after developing, of course, comes another process of drawing the negatives, look at them, and then scanning them.
Database.
Yes.
Database.
So in total, we had more than 500 photograph, a negative, because some of the rolls actually were more than 36.
And of course, the scanning part also, that was like, okay, we're gonna do a scan for a few pictures, and then we're gonna look at, and then also we said like, why not to actually, and wound up like selling 500 something images. It's the hardest part actually, and it was the quickest part.
Was the selection, which picture to pick. And of course, there is we said, like there is a big difference between like making a selection from a single body of work for a single photographer and making a selection with a group, with everybody, to make one selection with everybody's contribution. And also like making a selection that will together tell something or say a story and goes also with the text that the participant wrote.
The interesting part that actually, yeah, the thing that was like for the participant was like, what are we looking for? Because now you are swimming in a sea of 500 images and you still didn't put things together, so you don't know exactly. We know we're talking about passages. We know that there's this amount of shots. We went through the photographs, they're all beautiful, but we didn't know what's kind of criteria to, and what's our method of actually selecting the images. And that's okay actually to start selecting without knowing exactly what you're gonna wind up with, because that's the whole idea of actually selecting. So what you're gonna do is like create a system for yourself. It's 500 images. We're gonna narrow it down to 200. That means we're cutting half. And this is as much as possible. You don't think too much about it. You that's the part where we were talking. I was like, just follow your gut feeling. Does this work? Do you see it or not? Which is, you have the flexibility. These pictures are not going in a black hole. They're still in the computer. You can get back if you need a picture, but don't get attached to the pictures, or don't give too much time to the picture, because you start creating an emotional attachment to a single image while you have 500, and you're gonna drown in this sea of pictures. So the method was like to cut to half and then cut this 200, and then we decided we're gonna certain amount of pages, and let's say like, okay, we need a double number of these pages for a starter. So we start narrowing down from 200 to 100. And that's when it start getting tough. That's when the conversations start to happen, and people start like disagreeing, because it's so easy to cut from 500 to 200. You know, strong images, they're like everybody, you can tell everybody's agreeing on. But from 100 to 60, that's when you find like the room is dividing. Because each one, it's not necessarily the work, it's actually, it's a matter of taste. And the whole thing, and the most important thing, was like, what's gonna tell the better story, you know? And the more you narrow the number, the more you start kind of figuring out what your narrative is about.
Yeah,
Design.
part. So these are examples of the final selection. Can you go through them? So of course, in the passages you go through different experiencing. Some people really focus on architecture, some on people like works on the passages, textures, and then of course the design part is how to put those images together, what goes in, what goes out, and that was tough. And these are some. This is the final design. So what you're seeing now is some of the spreads.
Yeah. So
When it goes to printing, you always need to make a dummy, like a test print. And this is like us checking the dummy, like checking that everything actually have the right dimensions, telling the same stories, and also feeling the book as an object. This is very important. And I always recommend, even if you print really low, yes, we are going to pass the real copies. We have 2 copies now to show. Of course, please handle it with care. So seeing a dummy of the real object really helps you also take further decisions about the paper, the binding, the combination of course, the selection itself, because then you see it in your hand and then you reconsider or you have discussions where you are going to put the texts and etc.
decision was, we discussed like what is going to be the best kind of method to print. As we discussed earlier, the way you print the picture, it does say a lot about the impact of the picture. If I print it like a inkjet or offset, or I print it digitally, or I print it in a dark room, that leave an impression on the viewer. So the whole decision of actually what's the method that we wanted to use was in the end we decided it's gonna be a Riso print. And Riso print to give like this texture, very kind of it's very unique. Each page, it's never gonna be exactly the same, and this is very similar to the analog photography approach and the darkroom approach too. Each picture is unique, each paper it's unique, and it's every time you hold this object in your hand, it's never gonna be the same like the other copy that you have. Like, so these 2 copies are different in every page.
Yeah, risograph is a form of is a printing technique that it's very similar to risograph and silk screening. So actually, the ink goes on top of the paper. You can also print in different colors that they are not provided by offset. STMYK, if you're familiar with the printing technique, is always you need to print a spot letter. Color, sorry. So we find it very interesting to also take the participants through this experience to also discover this form of printing, because it's also not very, how to say, like popular in Cairo or in Egypt in general, but it's coming in. And when going back to the zine culture, Riso printing is very popular when it comes to printing zines. So because it's fast, it's you can present, it's cheap, and you can present as much copies as you want. Next. So yeah, this is like in zoomed in from how the printing looks like of one image. Then assembling the publication. It's very so the publication at the end, as you see. I don't know if it's really turning around already. Yes, it's.
So yeah, we decided actually to do like the 12 copies, and the idea of actually And this is for me as actually as a photographer, and I've been, yeah, I printed before, and I printed in different methods, and I try to put the work together, but for me, still that's quite an experience because now you're publishing, you're putting for like as far as you see it as a PDF on the computer, it's great. It looks easy, but the amount of work and care and methodology and system that you have to create yourself to not to ruin the print, especially at some point we reach a point it's like, oh, okay, we thought like we have a lot of paper, but apparently the paper was like just the amount, like, you know, we barely made it. So at some copies that we couldn't even afford to have a fingerprint on the paper because that would ruin it. And this is a different, and that's the beauty of it actually, that makes this each copy handmade from A to Z, well cared and well, like, you know, it's like your baby. It's you cannot just, like, you know, deal with it like, you know, like it's there's can be substituted with another copy. Like, no, you only have 12 copies, and you have to consider what the 12 copies gonna be like and how they're gonna be produced. You try as much as we're all humans, so but you're trying as much to perfect each print, each cut, each you know, fold, each everything. So it's a lot of time, it's a lot of care, it's a lot of also, you know, attention for details. And
So, yeah.
some more than others.
So here you see all the spreads printed and folded and numbered because they need to be assembled together. And then there is a process of cutting each page the right size and then assembling everything together with the text that we made the decision in the end is going to be on transparent paper that goes through the images. Yeah.
You wanted to ask something? Sorry.
Yeah, maybe we can talk about it when we finish because we are going to talk about this. Usually, it's um, um, usually it's work in progress. Like you don't know. Like you need to try as much as possible. Of course, for me as a trained designer, I can make this decision quicker. But of course, for the photographer, he's also have a relation with those photographs and the way how they see it. So yeah, it's actually evolving. You know, it's a process. But of course, for this specific zine, because the binding was also decided in advance how we do it. So picking pictures that they have a specific subject in the middle that was. Yeah, we needed to be careful with that. So we need to shift them or make them smaller. Also, the relation between the two images, like what comes next to the other one. So this is also like was very important. Unfortunately, we didn't have so much time to elaborate on that and to discuss it like fully. I would recommend like you do it, you sleep on it at least, you know, before you go to print. But of course, in the circumstances of this workshop was like kind of difficult to do. Yeah. So the results was, as you see, like in a copy, it's a publication, limited edition, 12. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay. And we call it mamar, like passage. So and it have a combination, a selection of the photographs that made by the participants, and also a unique gelatin prints made by Abdallah. It's also to add to the uniqueness of each copy. So he made 12 prints, and each copy has one edition. So the selection, as we said, aims to reflect the group collective experience of downtown passages. The zine was in black and white, printed using printing machine, a Riso printing machine. But also we decided to print 2 copies of each, like using different kind of paper, also to see the different result, the color. So one is on beige paper, one on gray paper, and the cover also like is different. The transparent paper where the text is printed on also different in color, to also like experiment different what will happen when you add color on top, the level of transparency. So all of this was taken for, and that's it. That's the end result.
Yeah, I wanted to actually thank the participant that all this work is actually like they also yeah, they made it. We kind of pushed at some point, like, we have to do it like very quickly. We have to take a lot of decision. And for them, it's like, it's like, yeah, analog photography, let's develop, let's do the work. And then at some point it's like, chop, 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 you have to finish, you have to do it. You have to like stay extra hours. You have to stay extra day. You have to, like, and it's for them. I know it's not easy that you're easing your way in a workshop in the first day and second day, like, especially as photographers, to be introduced. Like, honestly, it's a lot to be done in 4 days, even 5 days. Like, a zine is something that you take your time with, and you put it together, and you come back and you take opinions, and you come back, and this is part of the exercise. It was like we're pushing through to do this. So thank you, Sif Nahas, thank you, Mark, thank you, Omar Ghazal, thank you, Sarah Nasri, thank you, Sabine, thank you, Ghalia. It was intense, but yet like really complete results. And honestly, this is something for me as a photographer, not even put in my work there, or like, it's their work, and it's their photograph, and it's their perspective about the passages. Uh, but there is such a beauty in putting your head in a certain project and actually really finishing it. And I think, like, for me, zine it's a very important thing to do for each photographer, for each designer, artist, illustrator. Everyone has to, put your head in the project and finish it, because that's when usually as artists we always stuck. Because you have a great idea, you start doing it, you get discouraged, you don't follow it up, and then you start losing the passion. So zine is very important for all the artist practices. Just gonna put.
Yes, I also will encourage this idea. And just to say, like, of course, you cannot ask a lot of yourself to be a photographer and designer. So always, I also encourage collaboration. It's always very good to have other people with you to have their point of view, especially when you're taking pictures and making decisions and selections. And just don't be afraid to produce. And I think this is really something that encourages or like take you out of any creativity block you're doing. Don't overthinking, just do. But of course, we discussed also with the participant that with all this kind of database of photographs we developed during this workshop, like we can make different zines and different layouts. So there is no one good layout or the best layout. And I think this would make it interesting with this process that is really cheap to produce, or cheap, like affordable to produce. You can print a copy and then you can create different copies. Each one is saying something different. So yeah, in the end, like with design, there is specific rules about what you should do with one photographs and what not. But in the end, you cannot really know without practicing it and then getting used to it and print it and see how it goes together. Please make sure to see the copy, because the real copy is the real thing. So to experience. And if you have any questions, we are here. And we are done. Thank you.
Thank you. Please give it up again.
Only the last few.